Happy Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome into another edition of Morning JOX here until 7 a.m. And as always, we appreciate you making us a part of your morning each and every day right here on JOX as we get closer and closer to week 4 of the college football season. Of course, the big one we all know is going to be Auburn and Oklahoma this weekend, with Auburn having I guess what I would consider to be a very real opportunity to present themselves as a serious college football playoff contender, at least here in the earlier parts of the season. I think a win over Oklahoma would certainly put them in that conversation for a lot of people. And similarly for Oklahoma, right? This is an opportunity for them to continue to show that what they did against Temple, what they did against Michigan, who I think the jury's still out on, and just how good this Oklahoma team and John Mateer really can be. So it's going to be an exciting weekend of college football. We spent a good bit of time breaking that game down for you already this week. Of course, we're going to do all of our picks and more of some of our breakdowns tomorrow, as is customary here on the show each and every Friday during college football season. But we do have a couple things to get into today, and we can just throw the question out there at the beginning because I do want to have a discussion based around it later. But kind of going off of Auburn, I think there's a few other teams that would fit into this category as well. But I want to hear from the listeners as well. 205-834-9450 on the courtesy GMC text line. And that's just what teams have the most to prove, in your opinion, coming up here in week 4. What teams do you look at and go, man, a win for that team this week, and it's going to kind of change my perspective, change what I think of that team here in the upcoming, or I guess really just over the rest of the season, and who are some of those teams that maybe will become legitimate playoff contenders in your mind with a strong performance. So you can throw those on the courtesy GMC text line. We'll get to those throughout the show, and then we'll have a little bit more of a discussion about that coming up a little bit later on. But we do have some big news in the world of college football to get to, and this isn't something that's particularly surprising, I don't think, to anybody. Now, if you're Ryan Day, you're not happy this morning. You weren't happy last night when this news came down. But I think for a lot of us, this is something that we have been looking for, and hopefully it's something that it's not going to fix anything that's wrong with the portal or NIL, but maybe it'll help a little bit. And that is that the NCAA has officially decided to eliminate the spring transfer portal window. So if you remember, typically what happens is you have the first portal window that'll open sometime in January. The last couple of years that's fallen kind of during the playoff slate. And so then during that time, guys can enter the portal, and then you'll have that other window later on in the spring that kind of gives guys, once you have maybe a better idea after spring ball, what the roster is going to look like, what kind of opportunities you might have, what you're looking at on the depth chart. Then we typically see more guys go on the portal, right? And that's where people kind of shore up their roster. So they're now getting rid of that spring window, and there's just going to be one portal window in January, or we believe it's in January. They haven't specified exactly what those dates are going to be, but it's been January the last few years. So I think it's safe to say that it will be around that time of, the latter parts of the college football playoff. So I know this is something a lot of people were looking for. Personally, I think it's great. I'm definitely in favor of, it. I don't think a lot of people are against transferring in college football. It's just how rampant, how ridiculous it's gotten. And now this isn't going to fix tampering. It's not going to change any of those things. That's still going to go on. But now it's kind of, all right, like you got to make your decision, right? If you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? Like you got to, if you want to make that call, you got to make that call, right? And I know for some people, they might think it's unfortunate. And, you look at a guy like a Bo Prabula, right? Last year, for example. That's a guy that played for Penn State. He was Drew Aller's backup, and he had to make a decision of, all right, well, I probably need to go in this portal thing because I want to find the best landing spot for myself. And it's unfortunate that my team's competing for a national championship, but like, you kind of have to watch out for yourself a little bit. I think this happened with Texas a couple years ago as well, where they had one of their backup quarterbacks. I believe Malik Murphy was the one that entered the portal while they were going on their playoff run. And I know some people look and go, wow, well, maybe you're one snap away from being the quarterback of a team in the playoff, but if you see the writing on the wall and understand that you're probably not going to be the starter there next year, you got to make that decision. So I don't think this is a bad thing. I think it's a step in the right direction. It's not going to solve a lot of things, but I do like constricting the portal window and not giving as much freedom to when players can leave. Because I mean, 2 portal windows was just kind of a lot. In my opinion. So this change will go into effect this upcoming year, so we'll wait and see what the exact dates on all of that are going to be. But it should be 1 portal window sometime in January, like it has been. But we're just waiting on the specific dates. So when you heard the news yesterday, Damian, do you feel any particular type of way about it? Do you feel strongly about it? Do you not really care? Do you think it's going to have a big impact? What were your thoughts on the portal changes?
I agree with it because now when you have the spring practice and wherever you fall on that depth chart, you can't weasel your way out of situations of, oh, because I wasn't named the starter, then I'm going to hit the transfer portal and go somewhere else. No, you got to have your decision made essentially after the season. Like as soon as the season's over, you've got that window of opportunity. But I think it's somewhat, I think it's going to balance itself out because now I think you start looking around at the depth at a lot of schools. You're probably going to have a little bit more carryover from year to year because guys only have a certain amount of time to make their decision. And I think that if you're, say, for example, like you look at UCLA and you look at Tennessee in the situation that happened with Nico and Joey, that's no longer going to happen anymore because now after that January window is up, you're pretty much locked in. And I think that for continuity purposes, especially in the spring, you can't, finish at one school at the spring and then start somewhere else in the fall. Again, there's a case-by-case situation, but I think that for competitive balance now moving forward, I think it's better because now the depth is going to be able to sustain a little bit more. At least that's what I'm thinking. But I'm interested to see how many names we see hit the portal at one time because it could go from, say, if you're a team that's 3-9, 4-8, your whole roster may be pretty much in the portal come season's end, coming in January. But how many of those guys find landing spots? Because you're gonna have to make a decision. Even if you're gonna receive a lot of these guys, you got to be very particular of where you get these guys from and where they can potentially fit in. So I think it's going to be rampant because I do think a lot of guys are going to hit, but it's going to balance itself out throughout the rest of the season. And I think that with guys having to make that sole decision in that certain area and that certain plot of time, you got to make some grown man decisions if you're going to leave. And there's no, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You're going to know quickly because if you don't, you're stuck.
And you should have to make grown man decisions, right? They want to be treated like adults. They're getting paid to play. That's the way that it should be. So, and as we know, the grass is not always greener, and we can keep saying that. And people are going to continue to make the decisions that they want to make ultimately. So that's just a change coming up with the portal window. It is worth noting that, so take, for example, Virginia Tech and UCLA, what they're going through right now because they just fired their head coaches. That rule is still going to stay in effect, which is essentially if your head coach leaves, then there is a 30-day window where the entire roster is a free-for-all. If you want to go in the portal, you can do that, and that is still expected to stick around as a rule. So that will be, I guess, the one exemption to the single transfer portal window is it still, if your coach gets fired, your coach leaves, that will then open up the roster to then enter the portal for 30 days. So that's your transfer portal news. Big update there, big change coming to the world of college football. But let's look at what we have to get excited about this weekend because we do have a pretty good slate. It's not as good as last weekend, let's be honest. It's not as good as last weekend, probably not as good as next weekend. But overall, still a very good slate of college football games that you have coming your way this weekend. So just a reminder of what you have to look forward to. You've got a Big 12 ranked-on-ranked matchup. You've got Texas Tech and Utah. That's going to be an 11 a.m. kickoff that you can enjoy there. And that should be a great game, especially I really like Utah. I think what they got with Devin Dampier, right now they would be my pick probably out of the Big 12. So really fun team to watch there, and that should be a good one with them and Texas Tech. Then you've got Tennessee and UAB up in Knoxville. That's going to be an 11:45 kick. It's going to be a good one. Then you've got Oregon and Oregon State. So you've got a rivalry game there that used to be a conference game, and now it's not. But you're going to have that game going off at 2 o'clock. Of course, Auburn, Oklahoma is going to be at 2:30. You're going to have Tulane and Ole Miss at 2:30. That's an intriguing matchup
Yes,
there
sir.
with head coach John Summerall. I know y'all had him on Mac and Cube earlier in the week. You got Michigan and Nebraska. That's a 2:30 game as well for the Molly Robinsons of the world. I know she's going to be very. Hey, this is a big opportunity for the corn. Just saying.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people are going to want to check that one out as well. You can see if Notre Dame can finally get their first win of the season. They're going to play Purdue.
They should.
They should. Correct. They should. Missouri and South Carolina. I think this is a very interesting game, especially because we know based on yesterday that Lenora Sellers is questionable, which I think is we're making progress, right? Because
Yeah.
I don't think we expected him to play, but now he's questionable. So, certainly his availability would be a major factor in that game. But Missouri's good, man.
Yeah.
And South Carolina, even before he got hurt, wasn't really inspiring a lot of confidence in me. So I think that's a very interesting SEC game, though. But you also have Florida and Miami. Going gets tough again for Florida.
Miami only a 7.5-point favorite.
Yeah, I'm
That's
going to take that. I'm going to take Miami in the points in that one, I think. But you never know. Hey, maybe Florida, again, I mean, they threw 5 interceptions last week and only lost by 10 to LSU. So maybe they can find a little magic this weekend. But you got a Big Ten ranked matchup as well. You've got Illinois and Indiana. That's going to be a 6:30 game alongside the Florida and Miami game. That's also 6:30. And then if you want a late night game, you've got Michigan State and USC. So those are some of the
the Big Ten Classic right there.
yeah, something like that. So those are some of the matchups. Again, maybe there's not a marquee game like a Georgia-Tennessee like there was last week, or Texas A&M, Notre Dame, that kind of thing. But I think Auburn, Oklahoma, obviously the big one for a lot of us. Very, very excited for that game and some other games to look forward to as well. You've also got Thursday Night Football tonight that you can enjoy. You're going to have the Dolphins at the Bills. Poor Tua, probably not going to be a great night for them. They really struggle against the Bills. And the Bills look, I mean, to be fair, I think the Bills and the Packers have certainly showed that they look like the two best teams right now, probably alongside the Eagles as well in the NFL. So, but that's going to be a fun game tonight, hopefully. But I definitely think the Bills will be able to take care of business in that one. So, we have a lot to look forward to. Again, a lot to look forward to as we get closer to the weekend. We will give you our picks tomorrow. For all of the big games going on over the weekend. But now, let's get a little bit into what's going on with Alabama and Auburn, just some of the latest around those programs, because you got to hear from Kalen DeBoer for the first time this week, really, because he didn't have his weekly press conference. So we got the SEC teleconference yesterday. We've got Hey Coach that he was a part of, not in his traditional format because it's a bye week, but he did call in and talk for about 10 or 15 minutes with Chris Stewart. So we've got some nuggets from that. You also had head coach Hugh Freeze of the Auburn Tigers giving some injury news yesterday ahead of this matchup. And finally, there's a very interesting article that came out about Jackson Arnold and his kind of the whole backstory of his decision to transfer into Oklahoma, how he ended up at Auburn. And I wanted to detail a little bit of that as well. So we'll tell you the latest, what's going on with Alabama and Auburn, take a little bit of a deep dive into Jackson Arnold as well. That's all coming up next on the Thursday morning edition of Morning JOX. 6:18 here on your Thursday morning. Welcome back into Morning Jocks. Conrad Van Order, Damian Mitchell here, alongside you until 7 o'clock when we will hand you off to McElroy and Kublick in the morning. If you're just now joining us and you missed the news that we started off the show with, that was the news yesterday that the NCAA has eliminated the spring transfer portal window for college football. So we're just going to have one portal window. It's expected to be in January. We don't know the exact dates yet, but just trying to kind of clamp down a little bit maybe on just how rampant the transfer portal has become, and hopefully this is something that's a positive move for the game of football. So that was the big news coming out there. I also posed a question that we are going to get into here and a little bit on the show, and that is who has the most to prove this week in college football. I think a lot of us would say Auburn would certainly be on that list, but who are some of the other teams that you think have a lot to prove this weekend with a win and maybe will change just how you perceive them, or maybe you'll take them more seriously now as a conference contender or a college football playoff contender, what have you. So I think that could be a fun discussion for us to get into in a little bit, and you can chime in there on the Courtesy GMC text line, 205-834-9450. But let's get to a couple of nuggets of information that we got yesterday from both Alabama and Auburn, because this was the first time that you got to hear from Kalen DeBoer all week long. He was on the SEC Coaches Teleconference earlier in the day, and then last night they had Hey Coach there at Baumhauer's, and he was a part of that for a little bit last night. But again, a lot of the stuff that you would expect, just kind of getting ready for the Georgia game coming up next week. One of his comments about the preparation was, our guys, as we go through the week, I can already tell that they're excited about the new challenge, and I like the momentum that we're building. So that's certainly something that you like to hear if you are an Alabama fan. He talked about the team needing to have a tough mentality and a fighter's mentality. And I think this kind of goes back to some of the things we heard from Kane Womack earlier in the week when he was speaking at a quarterback club in Mobile. And it was, essentially, Alabama needs to be more resilient, right? They need to, if somebody punches them in the mouth, how are they going to be able to respond to that? Because we've really only seen that happen one time, and it was the Florida State game, and they didn't know how to respond. So you haven't gotten punched in the mouth the last couple of games. Georgia's going to punch you in the mouth. It's not a question of if, but when, right? Maybe it's going to be very early on in the game. I think you saw last year, right? Alabama didn't really get punched in the mouth until early in the second half of that game, and they didn't really know how to respond, and that's how Georgia came back. I mean, credit to Georgia for coming back last year in that game. It was, incredible, but, a lot of that, too, was Alabama was cruising, then Georgia starts to fight back, and Alabama goes, oh, all right, well, we don't want any part of that, and they had to kind of pick themselves up off the mat to finish that game last year. So that's something that's good to hear there. That's good to hear. He also said that the team has found a way to keep their edge coming off of the Wisconsin loss going into the bye week, which is really, really good to hear. He said, quote, "It's led to really positive and good body language and effort that has been contagious throughout our football team." That's Kalen DeBoer talking about his team playing with an edge in practice this week, which is certainly good. You also got to hear a little bit from Kirby Smart yesterday as he spoke a little bit on Ty Simpson, and he just said, quote from Kirby, "From what I've seen, he's extremely accurate, extremely athletic, and those are two things that I already knew before I turned on the tape." So Kirby, obviously, you would imagine, going to probably keeping up with Alabama, what's going on, knows that they're going to be an opponent earlier on in the season, and certainly if you look at the film for the last couple of weeks, you see a lot of things that probably do impress you as an opposing coach with his accuracy and his decision-making. But the question is Ty Simpson going to be able to carry that forward, and is he going to be able to do that against Georgia? He was also asked about Jam Miller, and it seems like Jam Miller's coming back. That seems like that's going to be as scheduled, so that's good news as well.
And I had a question about the Jam Miller situation. Do you think, how big of an impact do you think he has in that running back room? Because, again, now, Louisiana Monroe, understand. Wisconsin, because of how physical and what they do in their run game, it was going to be hard for anybody. But what's kind of your, and again, we're over a week away, but what's kind of your gut feeling if Jam Miller does come back? Do you have sort of a pitch count for him, Or do you just let him loose against this Georgia defense?
I mean, I guess it depends on if he's 100% or not, and that would just be my question, right? Is he coming back at 100%? Is he coming back at 85%, something like that? And I do think that what you've gotten to see out of the running back room, I think Kevin Riley has really shown something. And again, I know last week, right, left some things to be desired. The whole running game did left some things to be desired, but I think Kevin Riley has certainly showed and maybe given you a little more confidence in who your RB2 would be. I mean, I still think Richard Young, I still think is a valuable piece for that team. I still think that Dre Washington can be a valuable piece for that team. But I do think that Kevin Riley has shown that he's the guy. I mean, he got the start last week. I think the coaching staff is reflecting that with the opportunity that they've given him in Jam's absence. But I would think my expectation is that Jam comes in. I think he would get the bulk of the carries in the game. But I think a lot of it with Jam too is you want him back. And some of the other running backs, I think, have shown progress in this. But you want him back for all the other things that he does, too. Not to say he's not a good running back, because he certainly is. And he's just a little bit of a bigger body, too, that's quick. I mean, we saw the pictures of him in fall camp. Like,
he yoked up.
Yeah, exactly. So you want a guy like that can be physical and punish the defense, the way that he can. But I think also what he does in pass protection, what he could do out of the backfield as a receiver, those are a lot of the things that factor in that against Georgia, you just can't afford to have those mistakes, right? You can't have those mistakes in protection that lead to a sack. Heaven forbid it leads to a strip sack and a turnover and those kinds of things. So I think that's where, again, a lot of the concern was with him being out. Wasn't these guys can run the football. It's can they do all the little things right? And so I think that's where Jam will help out a lot. But I will say this, if Tim Keenan comes back in this game, for the Georgia game, I think that is probably has a bigger impact on the game for Alabama than Jam Miller does. Nothing against Jam Miller. I just think Tim Keenan, I mean, he's pretty good. So is Jam, but defensive line still needs a little.
Right.
They need a little more oomph. So, but yeah, no, I mean, I think certainly Jam will make an impact coming back, but I it's not one of those things where if I find out, Jam Miller's actually not coming back for the Georgia game, it's not going to change how I feel about the outcome of that game, in my opinion.
Right, and you got Alabama winning by what, 15, 20?
No, I do not.
Oh.
I do not.
We'll save it for next Friday.
We'll save that for next Friday.
I got you.
I will not be picking anybody to win by 15, I can promise you.
Okay, I got you.
I think it's going to be a very tight, probably one-possession game, but that's just my opinion for next week and what's going on there. All right, how about the Auburn side of things? So got a couple of injury updates yesterday. That was really the main positive takeaway. And Damari Alston, he's a full participant at practice yesterday, so that's a good sign. Seems like they're going to have a full stable of running backs there, or at least with Alston and Cobb good to go. So that's good news. And then Champ Anthony looks like he's going to be expected to be out there on Saturday as well, as he's coming back from his, I think it was a thumb injury, right? It's something with one of his fingers. But he's going to come back there. That should help the Auburn secondary. Hugh Freeze was very optimistic about that and how his return can make a big impact there. But that's good news if you're an Auburn fan to get both of those guys back or expect to have them back for the biggest game of the season for you so far.
But in saying that, people that are doubtful are impactful for the Auburn side of things, because the guy that we kept hearing about all fall camp long was Jay Crawford.
Mm-hmm.
Jay Crawford, my apologies. And now he's doubtful for the Oklahoma matchup. When your secondary isn't at 100% and through 3 games, it hadn't necessarily been the best.
Not a good opportunity to have injuries is what you're saying?
Right.
Yeah.
And what you've got to go against in John Mateer
fair.
and that secondary is going to be interesting. And then also for Oklahoma too up front, their offensive line is
they got 2 guys that are going to be out there, 2 starters.
Yeah. Like just it's the part of the game that you hate to see, but it does make an impact on the field, because again, if you're Auburn, I mean, Amarius Mims is doubtful, and also Jay Crawford. Those are 2 key pieces. But one of the best things that Auburn has is they played a lot of guys on that defensive line. So in namesake, you would love to have him out there. But as deep as you are in that defensive line room, it's not too detrimental. But it can be, it can be a problem because of what Amarius Mims has been able to do on that defensive line.
Yeah, so there you go. There's your Auburn injury update. But like Damian pointed out, right, you get one piece of good news in the secondary with Champ Anthony, one piece of maybe not as positive news with Jay Crawford So we'll see how that situation plays itself out for Auburn. But no doubt about it, that secondary is going to need to be on point this weekend because John Mateer, I know a lot of people are tired of us talking about how good he is. He's very good. He's very good. I promise you. You will see on Saturday. Not saying that guarantees a win for anybody, but he's a good player. And if you're Auburn, you need to be ready to defend the air. So we will see how that plays out. But we do want to still get to a little bit of the backstory of Jackson Arnold. Very interesting story that came out yesterday, kind of going into his decision to leave Oklahoma and head to Auburn. We're going to have the author of that story join us on Three Man Front later in the day. So we'll give you a little preview of that coming up here, as well as getting into who are the teams that have the most to prove on the field this weekend and what teams can, with a win this weekend, can maybe change their perception in the college football world. We get to your thoughts, our thoughts as well, and a little bit of the Jackson Arnold story next on Morning Jocks. 6:33. Welcome back into Morning Jocks. Conrad and Damian here with you until 7 o'clock when we'll hand you off to McElroy and Kublick in the morning. And we are going to get to some of your text here coming up in just a few moments, as some of you weighing in with your thoughts on Auburn and Oklahoma this weekend, as well as some of your thoughts on the spring transfer portal going away. And some other things, some news and notes for both Alabama and Auburn from the teleconference, some injury updates for Auburn, some good, some bad. Damari Alston, Champ Anthony expected to be back. Jay Crawford maybe not going to be available this weekend. So that will keep you up to date with what's going on with those programs. But we did have something I wanted to get into with a little bit of the backstory of Jackson Arnold, the Auburn quarterback, because if you somehow had missed the information, he used to play at Oklahoma and he now plays for Auburn. So a little bit of a homecoming of sorts for him this weekend in Norman. And let's be honest, probably a place that he doesn't have the fondest memories of, because last year was rough. And a lot of it was, I mean, to be fair, some of it was on him, some of it wasn't on him, right? A lot of it wasn't with, the injuries to the offensive line last year. I mean, they were down to like their seventh string wide receiver for most of the season because they had just so many injuries in that room. It was just a very dysfunctional kind of situation. His offensive coordinator had gotten fired, early on in the season. It was a mess for Jackson Arnold. And so ultimately, he did end up hitting the transfer portal and coming to Auburn. And now we've gotten kind of a look behind the curtain of that whole situation. And this story comes from George Stoya for Sooner Scoop. So he is going to join us on a three-man front coming up later this afternoon, and hope that you'll join us for that interview as he'll take us a little bit deeper into this article. But I just wanted to hit a couple of highlights from the article. And a lot of it goes into, right, how he had to make a decision very quickly, because he understood that you kind of got to strike while the iron's hot in the portal, right? And quarterbacks are a hot commodity, so there's certainly going to be a market for you if you're a Jackson Arnold type player. But if you want to, kind of have your pick of the litter, so to speak, of where you want to go, instead of just having to land with the highest bidder or whatever couple of programs are left needing a quarterback, he wanted to go in the portal quickly because he knew he wanted to have an opportunity to make the right decision for him. So he hit the portal pretty quickly. He had a conversation with Brent Venables. Apparently that went very well. They left things on a good note and just kind of understood that's the way that things were going. He got to meet with Ben Arbuckle, who is the new offensive coordinator there at Oklahoma that they brought over from Washington State. He got to meet with him one time before he left, but essentially his mind had already been made up, and it was very clear, I guess. I don't know if it was directly made clear or if it was just a writing on the wall situation, but I mean, you kind of knew John Mateer was probably going to follow his offensive coordinator to Oklahoma, which is exactly what happened. So Jackson Arnold decided, it's probably in my best interest to leave. Shout out to Jackson Arnold's dad, though, because in the story, it does mention that his father made sure to let him know, hey, you can do whatever you want to do, but you have to understand the grass is not always going to be greener. And so whatever decision you do make, think about it very carefully. Do not make a decision out of hate. So good props to Mr. Arnold there on holding his son accountable. So I certainly think that's, and I know, look, there's a lot of dads that do that. We just unfortunately hear about a lot of the dads that maybe don't give that advice. Nico's dad. Anyways.
Wow.
I mean, that,
man,
talk about a decision that's aged very poorly. I'm just
got a man fired.
Just throwing that out there. Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. I did think this was another interesting part of the article, though. And this was that apparently John Mateer actually had been offered more money by other programs to go and be their quarterback, namely Miami and North Carolina. Those were two that were mentioned as Oklahoma had to, I guess, not convince him to take a discount necessarily, but they had to sell him a little bit on, hey, I know your offensive coordinator came here. He had made it known that he had always kind of wanted to play in the SEC. He always wanted to play at the highest level of college football, but I'm sure when people are flashing blank checks in front of you, it's probably pretty tempting to listen to those offers as well. But Oklahoma ultimately able to convince John Mateer to land there for a little bit less than the Miamis and North Carolinas of the world. I'm sure Bill Belichick would really like to have John Mateer right now.
Yeah,
Might have changed a couple things.
no offense to Gio Lopez, but if we had a chance, if given the choice between the two, and if you're
Yes.
Miami, hindsight, you wouldn't have gone wrong with either one, Carson Beck or John Mateer. But
No, I mean I think they're probably pretty happy with
right,
the decision that they have ultimately made there. But yeah, essentially, and it just kind of goes further into, and I don't want to spoil too much of it because of course we are going to have the author on coming up on 3-Man Front a little bit later. But just a very cool backstory on kind of how quickly you have to make these decisions, what the process is like of him going, all right, I'm going to make up my mind, talk to the head coach, talk to the offensive coordinator, essentially have that last moment of, all right, is there any way that we can keep you here? Anything we could do to make you want to stay? No, you've already made up your mind. Okay, cool. Well, we've already kind of got a plan for the direction we're going to go anyways. It seems you have a plan for where you're going to go, and maybe it's just going to be better off for both of us. But I mean, everything in there, Brent Venables very complimentary of Jackson Arnold, said he handled things the right way. And also, making it known, like, yeah, a lot of the things last year weren't his fault. Like, it's just an unfortunate situation, but if you're also being realistic, right, Brent Venables on the hot seat this year, and you can't roll the dice on a quarterback that you maybe don't have 100% confidence in when you can go and get a guy like John Mateer, because Brent Venables is coaching for his job right now.
Yep.
And you got to do what you got to do. You got to put the best players that you can on the field, and I guess that's the way that Oklahoma decided to go. So that's ultimately just a little bit of a look behind the curtain at Jackson Arnold, his decision to leave Oklahoma and head to Auburn. But seems like everybody's happy with the decision that they've made, and Jackson Arnold going to have a big opportunity on Saturday to go back and have the last laugh, so to speak, with the Sooners.
I'm very interested in how the reception is going to be for Jackson Arnold when he returns to Oklahoma. Like, do the fans make a big, whoop-de-doo about it, or do they kind of, just say, hey, man, we actually appreciated what you did for us because we don't beat Alabama if it wasn't for you.
That was the last time he was in Norman.
Yeah.
For a game.
So it's, you think that it wasn't ugly exit. Because, I mean, even in the article, with Brent Venables being extremely complimentary about Jackson Arnold and everything, again, like you said, it wasn't his fault. It's, he had made some mistakes, but he's also working with essentially walk-ons at receiver. Like, guys he never once thought he was going to be throwing to. He ends up having to, make the plays, and everything kind of just weighed on him. And, and again, for both him, John Mateer, you're in a better situation than you once were. Because if you're John Mateer coming from Washington State, not a lot of people knew who you were anyway. But now through 3 games, you've kind of put the world on notice. And very similar to Jackson Arnold, it's, oh, well, you kind of see what I can do and I actually have talent around me. It's not just, a lot of people saw the turnovers and, the biggest thing for me were the fumbles. It was, okay, we're letting you run, but you're also not taking care of the football. But now since he's been at Auburn, been smart, been taking what the defense is giving him. And again, he's a year older. It's the football maturation process. And Cole talks about this a lot, is you get better at football by playing football. The more reps that you get, and him having to sit back and watch Michael Hawkins Jr. go up and down the field on Auburn last year, it's, well, dang, like I could have done that. And then, his opportunity presented itself when Michael Hawkins Jr. started to struggle. He was back into the starting lineup. And kind of just the growing pains of being a quarterback are already tough. And then to have those, external factors and those things that happen to his receiver room just completely get decimated. Everybody needed a fresh start.
Yep.
Because, like you said, Brent Venables his butt is firmly on the hot seat. And through 3 games, it's kind of cooled off a little bit because of the fact that John Mateer has come in and really gotten this offense back clicking, and he's healthy in a lot of places. So, in hindsight, everything works out. But also, shout out to Jackson Arnold's father for talking to him like a grown man.
Yeah,
like,
keep it real.
Yeah, like, hey, the grass isn't always greener. Are you 100% sure with your decision? Then so be it. And he even complimented Auburn. He's like, it's been great so far.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be mountains to climb as the season goes on, but everything for now, we're good to go.
I was about to say, as long as you keep winning, things are going to be just fine there for Jackson Arnold and Auburn. And so yeah, it's a really good, really interesting read. So if you want, join us at 12 o'clock on 3-Man Front. That's when George Stoya, the author, who writes for Sooner Scoop, he's going to join us on 3-Man Front at noon to kind of give a deep dive into the whole backstory of Jackson Arnold and his transfer decision. with the Auburn Tigers. Also, a quick note from the story: Brent Venables did also mention that he, according to in the article, he did say, "Hey, we tried to keep Jackson Arnold. We wanted to keep him, but obviously, you're not going to pay two quarterbacks like him and John Mateer. So that was really never going to work." And I do have to give credit to Hugh Freeze, because this was something that he did say on the teleconference yesterday, and this is the first. Unless I'm mistaken, this is the first time that he's acknowledged this, and I appreciate and respect him for doing this. But he was asked about last year's Oklahoma game, and you got to hear Hugh Freeze say yesterday, quote, "It was a game we easily could have won. We made a bad call and put our quarterback in a bad situation," end quote. Because we've talked about that one a lot. As bad as Peyton Thorne was at times, he should have never been throwing the football in that situation. And I can guarantee you that if Auburn is in a similar situation this year, I think they're going to handle it a little bit differently. So good to see that maybe Hugh Freeze learned some lessons from that game last year, because I know a lot of Auburn fans, that one was a killer last year. But hey, if you're an Alabama fan, you weren't a big Oklahoma guy last year either. So let's see if Auburn can get a little bit of revenge for the state of Alabama. But that's a little bit of a look at Jackson Arnold, his decision to leave Oklahoma and head to Auburn, as he will have a homecoming of sorts this Saturday there in Norman. But we want to get to some of your text that you've sent in throughout the show on the courtesy GMC text line 205-834-9450. Also going to give you some teams that I think have the most to prove this upcoming weekend of college football. So more to get into as we put a bow on the Thursday edition of Morning Jocks. That's all coming up next. 6:49. Appreciate you tuning in to Morning Jocks here on your Thursday morning. Connor and Damien here with you for a few more moments before we hand you off to McElroy and Kublik in the morning. Okay, so one of the Florida Georgia Line guys, that's Brian Kelly, right? Because that was the whole thing with Dabo and okay. Is he the better of the two?
No. He's kind of the lesser known of the duo. Tyler Hubbard has kind of made he's kept the
There you go.
He's kept the train rolling. But yeah, Kelly with an EY instead of a Y. But that's what Dabo got a little confused on. But it was great though. It was great.
Yeah, I don't think they're. It's just sad to see how happy Dabo and Brian Kelly were at that time, and just how quickly that seems to have fallen for both of them.
Well, the only thing with
rough
Brian
weeks
Kelly,
for both of them.
The only thing with Brian Kelly, it was a question that set him off. He's overall, you're sitting at 3-0.
Oh yeah, no, I mean in terms of the team, yeah, and just he's, I think internally maybe struggling with some demons, and Dabo certainly seems to be. So that's that's a little bit of that there. But let's get to some of your text here on the Courtesy GMC text line, 205-834-9450. We might have to save some of the teams teams with the most to prove until tomorrow, because we want to have time to get to your text each and every day, of course, because you're just as much of a part of a show as we are. Someone chimes in, they say, man, why you got to start my day off with Florida Georgia Line? Come on.
Hey, can't be a hater all your life.
I'm right there with you.
Can't be a hater all your life. I mean, you can, but I wouldn't recommend it.
I'll just say this. I know one huge Florida Georgia Line fan in the entire world, and it's Damien.
Hey.
I don't know another one.
There's a few. I've been to a couple concerts. I ain't alone.
Oh, I'm sure you're not.
I'm not alone.
I'm very confident that you are that you are not alone. Let's see. This text coming in, it says, Aaron and Lincoln. He says, Utah -3.5 versus Texas Tech. Who do y'all have? He says, neither team has had a game worth a darn. I believe both are overrated. I think there'll be a touchdown every other drive at least. Yeah, I mean, I guess the over would probably not be a bad take there. But if you're looking for just a spread, I like Utah. I think Utah is the best team in the Big 12 right now. I think, to be fair, right, everyone still has something to prove in that conference, certainly. But yeah, I like Utah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, Texas Tech, I mean, they've got a little bit better, return on investment than Texas A&M with the best roster that money could buy. I mean, they got money for days, and they bought well. It's just
they've done well.
Kind of in that wait and see mode of, can this collection of successful and wealthy college players, can they put it all together?
Well, and the other thing with the Big 12 is, I know I just said I like Utah. I don't know if there's a team in the Big 12 that you look at and go, oh, well, if you beat that team, then we'll take you seriously, right? Because they're all kind of, it's just a lot of parity, I think, in that conference. But all right, see, this text comes in and says everyone needs to pay attention to this Texas Tech Utah game. Tech might be a legit title contender. They spent more money than anyone in the portal, and they built a really good team. They have spent a lot of money. And I mean, they are good. I mean, right? They're ranked. It's going to be a top 20 matchup there. So we'll certainly see if the Cody Campbell bank account is paying off there for Texas Tech. We'll get, I guess, closer to that answer this weekend. This text says, does Auburn's mental state unravel if they lose at Oklahoma? I don't think so.
No. And
now you'll learn a lot, right? Like you'll face
1000%.
adversity for the first time, but I don't think they'll crumble.
I was having a conversation with one of my buddies. He's a big Auburn fan, and he said that we're going to shock the world Saturday. And I asked him, I was like, okay, at what point do you stop having this mindset of we're shocking the world? Like, when does it become we're a better football team and we're going to go out there and prove it? Because it's not – I don't necessarily think it was going to be a shock if Auburn beats Oklahoma. It's two good football teams, and the better team won. It's – I don't understand the mindset of, okay, finally you can look at your talent, you can look at your roster, and you can look at the results on the field. You're sitting at 3-0. This isn't a shock. Like, if it's Georgia on the other side, then yeah, I understand. But it ain't like Oklahoma's just leaps and bounds better than you. You actually have the positional – we went through it yesterday. You have positions that you have the better team and better players than Oklahoma does. That it's just a win.
This text rolls in. It says It says, we don't need Auburn doing our dirty work. Go Sooners. What would the dirty work be?
I don't know.
But you don't need them.
Nope.
You don't need them. Don't need Auburn. Let's see. Our friend Bammer Abroad from overseas, he chimes in this morning. He says, "What does an ideal September Saturday look like for you, Conrad, without the stress of watching Alabama try to win a football game? Also, Illinois plus 6.5 over Indiana is a smash." All right, Illinois plus the points. I'll be honest with you, it is glorious. There's nothing like being able to sit down and enjoy an entire day of college football without the fear in the back of your mind of your team disappointing you. That's a fear that I did not live with for a long time. And unfortunately, I now live with that fear. So I am going to have a fantastic Saturday. I guarantee you I'm going to have a great Saturday. This text rolling in from Crimson Convict. Guys, the SEC is pretty stout in the top 2 or 3. I'm concerned about several really good teams having 3 losses. I'll call it right now. A 3-loss team from the SEC will be in the college football playoff this year. It feels like this is going to be the year that it happens. Now, who do I know who it's going to be? Nope. But I think that this is the year that we're going to see that happen. We're back tomorrow at 6 a.m. Appreciate you joining us. McElroy and Kublik in the morning. Those guys.